Today's video is going to be all about calorie counting and all of the tips and tricks that I've learned over the past 5 years that has made calorie counting go from something that I used to honestly be afraid of, that I perceived to be very tedious, very annoying, not sustainable, to now being something that I do pretty much without a second thought, something that comes very naturally and mindlessly to me. There were a lot of things that I did wrong at first, and I kind of want to point out all of those things to you in the hopes that you too can have a more positive, stress-free relation to calorie counting in order for you to reach specific physique goals that you might have. Let's jump right in. So I'm actually going to make this into a 4-part series because I thought it was too much to put into one whole video. So the 4 parts of this series are called Part 1, don't lose the plot. Part 2, we're going to go over common errors that people make when they calorie count. Part 3, we're going to talk about certain tips that have made calorie counting way easier for me. In Part 4, we're going to talk about what the hell do you do when you eat out. The reason why I decided to start with Part 1 being called Don't Lose the Plot is because mindset is everything. And if you're going into calorie counting with a piss poor mindset, you're going to have a bad time. Have you heard of how your subconscious mind kind of, without you even realizing it, affirms your beliefs, even if your beliefs are limiting, even if your beliefs aren't necessarily the full truth? What we believe, we see. When we're playing punch buggy, we see more punch buggies than we would have if we hadn't been playing punch buggy. When we're playing the license plate game on the road, we start seeing license plates that we'd never seen before. It's like when you start knowing what it is that you're looking for, when you have clarity over what it is that you're trying to do, you start seeing solutions everywhere. So the first point that I want to make about not losing the plot is the point of calorie counting is not accuracy. It is precision. So I learned this concept, I think in science class in high school. And I'm going to put up a little infographic for us. But this is the difference between accuracy and precision. Accuracy is hitting the bullseye every time, whereas precision is maybe you're not hitting the bullseye every time, but you're getting pretty damn close. But every time that you do shoot, you shoot in that exact same place every time. When it comes to calorie counting, what we want is precision. Let me explain why. Think about it this way. Have you ever noticed how when you weigh yourself on a scale, different scales tell you different weights? People always make that joke that weighing yourself at the doctor's office, you always are 5 pounds up. But so many different things are happening. When you weigh yourself at home, first of all, it's a different scale. It's probably calibrated differently. You probably get to do it before you eat anything and after you use the restroom. You can probably do it in your underwear or maybe even fully naked. So that's all going to change how you weigh in at home versus at the doctor's office where your shoes are on. They don't even ask you to take off your shoes. You're wearing clothes. You're probably layered in clothing. You probably already ate something. You probably already drank something. All of that is going to affect your weigh-in. So it's difficult to see the full picture if every time you weigh yourself on a different scale. The same is true for calorie counting. What I notice is the first time you download a calorie counting app, and you look up a certain food. Let's say you're looking up what is the calories in steak. You put in steak and a bunch of different steak entries come up. Raw sirloin steak, cooked sirloin steak, raw beef tip, cooked beef tip. You know what I mean? There's so many different cuts of steak and things. It shouldn't matter which data entry point you choose. What matters is when you do it the same almost every time. You get the same cut of steak, and when you cook it the same way. When you weigh it the same way, and when you track it in your notes, in your tracking app, you track it the exact same way. It's not going to be perfectly accurate. In fact, if you cross-reference with Google, you're going to go insane because it's going to tell you different things. That's not what we're after. The point of calorie counting is to have a starting point and then a reference point for how we are going to slowly decrease food over time, right? Because that's what puts us in a calorie deficit, is decreasing how much food we're eating. So if you were eating 5 ounces of sirloin and you start eating 4 ounces of sirloin, more likely than not, you're going to be losing weight on that scale. It's not about being perfectly correct. It's about simply having a starting point to refer back to when we are slowly decreasing our food. Moving on. Keep in mind that you do get better at eyeballing over time. So what a lot of my clients will say is, after 3 months of doing it, bro, it just felt like too much. I had to stop. Like, girl, if you've been doing it for 3 months, you know what 5 ounces of sirloin steak, we're going to keep going back to that sirloin steak. You know how much 5 ounces of sirloin steak looks like, give or take. And even if you get like 4 ounces here, 6 ounces there, 5 ounces here, still over time, it kind of all evens out, bro. Every time I make rice, I make exactly 8 servings of rice. So I'll weigh it out when I cook it. I'll weigh out the raw rice when I cook it. And then when I go to serve myself, I don't have to weigh it every time because I know there's exactly 8 servings in there. And even if one day my serving of rice is a little bit smaller than the next day, over the course of the week, it's all going to even out because a calorie deficit isn't a single day condition. A calorie deficit is a condition that happens over a larger stretch of time. So don't wig out. Trust yourself. It's okay to start eyeballing stuff a little bit, especially if you are just a lifestyle lifter. You don't have a deadline. You don't have a competition that you want to bring your best to. You just kind of want to lose a little bit of weight over the next 3 to 6 months in preparation for your wedding or in preparation for summertime, or just because you want to feel better in your body and you want to challenge yourself. It's okay to take our time. We don't have to be as precise. We don't have to be as rushed to getting there. And maybe allowing yourself that little bit of extra wiggle room to allow for some margin of error, to allow for eyeballing is what's going to allow you to be consistent long term. And if you've been here long enough, if you follow science-based professionals, science-based fitness professionals, you know that consistency trumps all. Consistency is king. Doesn't matter how perfect your protocol is if you can't actually be consistent with it. So more often than not, most people are more consistent with a slower rate of progress, a more moderate approach to calorie counting and fat loss in general. Moving on. This point kind of plays off of the last point. If you've been tracking for a while, because you start trusting yourself in your eyeball capabilities, and because you know kind of what calories look like in food, like everyone always jokes like, don't calorie count, like you'll never see food the same again. I beg to differ. Because we see food differently, because we see numbers associated with food, yeah, sure, you can take it to one extreme and that's what causes you to restrict, or you can use it as a way to choose moderation every time. Instead of having no cookies, you can have 1 to 2 cookies because you know how many calories are in those cookies. You can enjoy those cookies, eat them slowly, savor them, enjoy life, and then move on from it instead of ignoring your cravings and then crashing out. You know what I mean? So you start finding a perfect balance between tracking and not tracking. Again, a lot of clients will say to me, bro, after X amount of time of calorie counting, it got really exhausting. Stop calorie counting then. The whole point of calorie counting isn't to calorie count forever. The whole point of calorie counting is to create awareness around your food decisions. And if you don't have a specific fat loss or like bulking goal, you're just maintaining, there really is no reason to calorie count after a certain point. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of fear that people have, like, oh, what's going to happen when I stop calorie counting? I'm not going to know what I'm eating. Girl, yes, you do. Slowly back off of calorie counting. Start to learn how to trust your body. Keep keeping track of your weight, and you're going to notice that you'll fall into an equilibrium. Trust yourself. And then guess what? Every now and again, if you're feeling up to it, you can track a day of food just to kind of see where you're at. I always relate it back to a financial budget. When you're like in your teens or 20s and you first start keeping a financial budget, it's really tedious. It's really difficult. You have to pay closer attention to it. You're not quite aware of what the dollar value is. You have to keep a closer eye to how much money you're making and how much money you're spending. Do you see the parallels here? How many calories you're burning and how many calories you're consuming? But as you keep tracking, you start to be able to do the math in your head. You start keeping a natural tally in your head of how much you've spent this month and how much you have left to spend. And it becomes mindless. It becomes a natural, helpful tool that you have in your head. You don't have to pay too much thought to it. It just comes naturally to you, kind of like brushing your teeth. okay? So yeah, that's kind of all the points that I had to make for part 1 of this Calorie Counting Made Easier series. I will see you next time for part 2, common errors that people make. And if you really want to see part 2, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow so that you don't miss a video from me ever again. Okay, girl. Thank you so much. Bye.